The high school gymnasium smelled like nervous sweat, dying flowers, and the dust burning off the stage lights. My feet were killing me in heels I'd bought just for today, and my polyester gown trapped the June heat against my skin. It didn't feel like a movie moment. It felt sticky and overwhelming. Around me, the noise was deafening, parents shouting names, the squeak of folding chairs, the performative sobbing of girls who would forget each other by August. I felt incredibly small. I clutched my diploma, the leatherette cover slick in my damp palm, and looked for the only anchor I had known for the last 2 years. Mr. Julian Thorne sat in the third row of the faculty section. He didn't look like a statue today. He looked tired. He was rubbing the bridge of his nose, a habit I knew meant he had a headache. He shifted in his seat, checking his watch, looking like a man who just wanted to go home, take off his tie, and listen to jazz in a quiet room. That human weakness, that visible exhaustion, made my chest ache more than his usual perfection ever did. We had never crossed the line. We hadn't even toe-dipped. But there were days when the classroom was empty and the rain hit the windows where we just sat in companionable silence, grading or reading, and I felt seen in a way my own parents didn't understand. Then he looked up. He caught me staring. He didn't smile his professional teacher smile. He just looked at me, his eyes soft and sad. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, acknowledging the invisible thread that had connected us. It felt like he was saying goodbye to a friend he wasn't allowed to have. I wanted to walk over and thank him, not for the grades, but for treating me like my thoughts mattered. But the aisle was crowded and the moment was fragile. So I turned away, swallowing the lump in my throat, stepping out into the blinding parking lot sunlight, feeling the profound, quiet grief of leaving the best part of my life behind. 5 years is a lifetime when you're in your early 20s. It's enough time to have your heart broken by boys who didn't get you, to worry about rent, to feel the crushing weight of student loans, and to realize that adulthood is mostly just pretending you know what you're doing. I was 23, tired, and carrying a stack of books in a dusty shop in Seattle where I worked on weekends to make ends meet. It was raining, naturally. I was thinking about whether I could afford takeout or if it was cereal for dinner again, when a voice cut through the hum of the heater. You really shouldn't stack the hardcovers that high. They'll warp. It wasn't a booming command. It was a familiar, gentle chiding. I froze. The books in my arms felt suddenly heavy. I turned around, bracing myself. Julian Thorne stood there. He looked older. The sharp lines of his face had softened slightly, and there were genuine crow's feet by his eyes. He was wearing a coat that looked well-loved, slightly frayed at the cuffs. He wasn't the intimidating authority figure anymore. He was just a guy in a bookstore shaking a wet umbrella. He looked up and saw me. The umbrella stopped shaking. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He looked almost panicked for a split second, like he'd been caught somewhere he shouldn't be. "Elena," he said, breathing the name out like a sigh. He looked at my name tag, then back at my face, trying to reconcile the teenager he knew with the tired woman standing in front of him. "Hi," I managed, my voice small. I didn't think you lived in the city." "I do now," he said, shifting his weight awkwardly. He looked down at his shoes, then back at me, unsure of the protocol. I retired. "Early." "Oh." We stood there, two ghosts from different chapters of the same book, neither knowing if we were allowed to turn the page. We went to the cafe next door because standing in the aisle felt too intimate and too public all at once. It wasn't a romantic reunion. It was awkward. I spilled a little packet of sugar on the table and nervously tried to sweep it up with my napkin. He watched me not with judgment, but with a faint, fond smile that made my stomach flip. "So," he said, wrapping his hands around a black coffee as if he needed the warmth, "you're working here?" "And at a publishing house," I added quickly, needing him to know I'd made something of myself. "Assistant editor. The bookstore is just extra." "That's good," he said, nodding. "You always were a hard worker. I worried about you, you know. You felt things so deeply." The admission hung there. He had worried. Why did you leave teaching? I asked, tearing my napkin into strips. He sighed, shoulders slumping. He looked at the rain hitting the window. I was lonely, Elena. It's a strange thing to be surrounded by hundreds of people every day and feel completely isolated. I needed, I don't know, a life that belonged to me, not the school board. He sounded so vulnerable. In high school, I thought he had it all figured out. Now I realized he had been just as lost as I was, just hiding it better. Are you happy now? I asked. He looked at me, his gaze lingering on my face, tracing the changes 5 years had made. I'm writing. That helps. But happy? I don't know if I know how to be happy yet. He checked his watch, a nervous tick coming back. I should go. I didn't mean to keep you. He stood up too fast, bumping the table. The clumsiness made him more real than any lecture ever had. He paid, leaving too big a tip, and practically fled, as if staying one more minute would shatter his resolve. I couldn't let it in like that. A week later, I went to a reading he was doing. It was a small library, smelling of damp wool and old paper. He was reading a passage about regret. His voice wavered slightly on the word lost, and I knew he was thinking about wasted time. I waited until everyone left. He was packing his bag, looking defeated. When he saw me, his shoulders tensed, then dropped. You came, he said softly. You ran away last time, I said, walking closer. You always seem to be running away when it gets real, Julian. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I'm not running away. I'm trying to be a decent human being. You're 23, Elena. You have your whole life. I'm baggage. I'm the past. Stop deciding who you are for me, I said, my voice shaking. I'm not a kid in the front row anymore. I'm a woman standing in front of a man who looks really lonely. He looked at me and the mask crumbled. He sat down heavily on the edge of the desk, rubbing his face with his hands. I am lonely, he whispered. God, I've been lonely for so long. When I saw you last week, it scared the hell out of me because you were the first thing that made sense in 5 years. And I can't have you. Why not? Because I'm terrified I'll disappoint you, he admitted, looking up with wet eyes. You have this idea of me, the brilliant teacher. But I'm just a guy who eats cereal for dinner and can't figure out his washing machine and regrets half the choices he's made. I'm not a hero. I don't want a hero, I said, stepping into his space. I eat cereal for dinner too. We started seeing each other, but it wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was tentative. It was terrifying. We went for walks because sitting across from each other at dinner felt too pressured. We talked about mundane things, taxes, broken radiators, the annoying coworker I had. One night, we were at his apartment. It was simpler than I expected. Messy bookshelves, a stain on the rug, a half-finished mug of tea on the coffee table. It made me relax. I was shivering. The heating in his building was terrible. Here, he said, grabbing a blanket from the sofa. He went to wrap it around me, but he hesitated. His hands hovered near my shoulders, unsure if he was allowed to touch me. The hesitation broke my heart a little. He was being so careful. It's okay, I whispered. He wrapped the blanket around me, his knuckles grazing my neck. He didn't pull away. He stood close, smelling of old books and soap. I don't know how to do this, he confessed quietly, his voice rough. I don't know how to be with you without feeling like I'm breaking a rule. There are no rules here, I said. I reached out and took his hand. It was warm and callous. Just us. He looked at our joined hands, then up at my eyes. He looked hopeful and scared. He leaned in slowly, giving me 1,000 chances to back away. When his lips touched mine, it wasn't a movie kiss. It was gentle, hesitant, and tasted of tea. It was a question, is this okay? And when I kissed him back, I gave him the answer. Dating was a series of adjustments. It was weird. I had to stop calling him Mr. Thorne in my head. He had to stop explaining references to me. We fell into a domestic rhythm that felt surprisingly easy. We went grocery shopping. Seeing Julian Thorne debate the price of avocados made him infinitely more human to me. We cooked dinner together. He was terrible at chopping onions, tearing up every time, which made me laugh. But the power dynamic was a ghost in the room. One evening, I was ranting about a book I was editing. He interrupted. Well, actually, the author probably intended. I put down my fork. Julian, I'm not writing an essay. I'm venting about my job. I need you to listen, not grade the author. He stopped, a piece of pasta halfway to his mouth. He blinked, then put the fork down. You're right. I'm sorry. I did it again. It's okay, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. But I need a boyfriend right now, not a professor. He squeezed back, a self-deprecating smile on his face. Boyfriend. Right. I'm working on that. I'm still learning the syllabus. It was those moments, the apologies, the willingness to be corrected, that made me fall in love with the man, not the memory. He wasn't perfect. He was trying, and that was better. The first time we slept together, it wasn't about fireworks. It was about shedding the layers of who we were supposed to be. We were in his bedroom, the streetlights casting a soft, orange glow through the curtains. We were both nervous. My hands were shaking a little as I unbuttoned his shirt. He noticed and covered my hands with his, stilling them. We don't have to, he said, his voice thick. We can just sleep. I want to, I said. I want it to be right. It's already right, he murmured, kissing my forehead. Because you're here. When the clothes were gone, there was a moment of vulnerability that felt like standing on a cliff edge. I saw the scar on his shoulder, the softness of his stomach. He saw me, truly saw me without any armor. It wasn't a performance. It was slow and quiet. It was whispers of, is this okay? And closer. It was holding on to each other like we were drowning. When he kissed the hollow of my throat, he made a sound, a low, contented hum that vibrated against my skin. Afterward, we lay tangled in the sheets, limbs heavy. He traced the line of my spine with his fingertips, his breathing syncing with mine. I never thought I'd have this, he whispered into the dark. I thought I missed my chance at being understood. You didn't, I said, pressing a kiss to his chest. You just had to wait for me to catch up. Happiness is fragile. We went to a small dinner party with his old colleagues. I was nervous. The vice principal was there. She had always been cold, but tonight she was icy. She cornered me near the bathroom. It's quite a cliche, isn't it? She said, sipping her wine, her eyes scanning me up and down. The student and the teacher. I always suspected he had a waiting list. It felt like a slap. I went to the bathroom and cried for 5 minutes, splashing cold water on my face. When I came out, Julian was waiting. He took one look at my face and knew. He didn't make a scene. He just walked over, took my hand firmly in his and said, "We're leaving." In the car, he was silent, gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice cracking. "I exposed you to that. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault people are mean," I said, though I felt sick. "It is my fault," he insisted, looking at me with devastation. "I'm the older one. I should have known better. I'm dragging you into the mud, Elena. You deserve to be with someone who doesn't come with a scandal attached." "I don't care about them," I lied. But I did care, and he knew it. The doubt had crept in, not about us, but about whether I was strong enough to handle the world looking at us like that. The doubt festered. He pulled away. He started staying up late writing, but I knew he was just avoiding coming to bed because he felt guilty touching me. Then he ended it, not with a shout, but with a whimper. "I can't do this to you," he said one morning over uneaten toast. "I see the way they look at you. I'm stealing your youth, Elena. You should be with someone your age, having fun, not defending your relationship to bitter old women." "I'm choosing you," I argued, crying. "You shouldn't have to choose," he said, his voice dead. "I'm leaving. I'm going to stay at my sister's for a while. Please don't call." He left. The apartment felt huge and empty. For 2 weeks, I functioned on autopilot. I went to work. I came home. I stared at the ceiling. I realized that the humane part of heartbreak is just how boring it is. It's just silence and the constant checking of a phone that doesn't ring. I finally drove to his sister's house. I found him in the garden, wearing an old sweater, raking leaves. He looked miserable. "You look terrible," I said from the gate. He looked up, startled. "I feel terrible." "Good," I said, walking over. "I'm not here to beg, Julian. I'm here to tell you that you're being an idiot. You're trying to protect me from the world, but you're just hurting me. That's not noble. It's selfish." He dropped the rake. He looked at me, really looked at me, and saw the anger and the love in my face. "I miss you," he whispered. "Every minute." "Then come home," I said, extending my hand, "and let people talk. Let them say whatever they want. I'd rather be judged with you than safe without you." He came home. We didn't solve everything overnight. We still had to deal with whispers, but we decided to stop caring. We realized that other people's opinions were just background noise to our actual life. 6 months later, we got married. No big church, no white dress with a long train. We went to the courthouse on a rainy Tuesday morning. I wore a cream dress I got on sale. He wore his best suit. The witness was the court clerk, a woman chewing gum who looked bored until she saw the way Julian looked at me. He held my hands, his palms sweating slightly. He looked nervous, not like the confident teacher, but like a man entranced. "I promise to be your partner," he said, his voice shaking a little. "To listen, even when I think I'm right. To be the man you deserve, not the man I was. To never grade your dishwasher loading skills again." I laughed, choking back tears. "I promise to call you out when you're being pretentious," I said. "And to love you, even when you're stubborn. Especially then." He slid the ring on my finger. It wasn't a giant diamond. It was a simple vintage gold band we'd picked out at a pawn shop. It was perfect. We walked out into the rain, sharing an umbrella. He pulled me close, kissing the top of my head. We weren't a scandal. We weren't a tragedy. We were just two people who had found each other in the mess of life. "What now?" he asked, looking down at me. "Now," I said, leaning into his warmth, "we go home and figure out what's for dinner." "Cereal?" he suggested with a grin. "Sounds perfect. Thank you for reading our story. If this journey of finding love resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more emotional narratives.